Now, do we have a big show ahead for you guys today? You betcha. Am I going to talk a little bit about Donald Trump? No. I'm going to talk a lot about Donald Trump. Let's just keep it real. Call it what it is. That's going to be in the second segment, though. So hold on. Buckle up, everybody. You know what he said. I'm going to give you a reaction all the way from Dick Cheney to Paul Ryan to Fox News. It's going to be a smorgasbord, okay? And then a couple of Dutch dudes double Dutch their way through an awesome segment. This is in the second hour, where they trick people into thinking that the Bible is the Koran. You're going to love that segment. Ted Cruz, proven a liar in both hours. Got a story about him in regards to Donald Trump in the first hour. And then in the second hour, are people being arrested for even saying the name Jesus in America now? We're going to find out in the second hour. That's the story about Ted Cruz. Okay. So I'm sick as a dog, but I came in because today was way too much fun to pass up. So fun little first segment for you guys before we get to the main event. One story that's totally trivial, one story that's totally important that no one else is covering. Okay, so first the trivial, just a little bit of fun. Carly Fiorina was having a town hall event, and she wanted to brag about it. Now, look, this happens every election cycle. We used to do this to Rick Santorum. But I can't resist. It's too much fun. So she sent out a tweet bragging about this town hall she was doing about tech in Iowa. So let's take a look at the picture she sent out from her campaign. Okay, well, that looks like wait a minute, that's not fair. Now that looks like a pretty full place. They got a nice panel going on. Carly speaking, Iowa Presidential Tech Town Hall. That sounds pretty good. What are we libs making fun of her for? Now let me show you a different picture from that same event. Oops. Sorry. That's not a town hall, that's a town fail. That one guy's looking back like, can I go now? Or is it a little too awkward? Now, to be fair, that is 7 more people than showed up at a Rick Santorum event. Can you believe he's still in the race? Anyway, Carly, it was nice knowing you. Good night and good luck. Okay, so this is fun, just fun, okay? Now we go on to an important story. Okay. In the midst of all the hoopla about Donald Trump saying this outrageous thing or that outrageous thing and what all the crazy things the Republicans are saying, Bernie Sanders is saying things that are, by Washington standards, radical, by the rest of the country's standards, perfectly understandable, but yet almost gets no coverage on it. So we're going to fix that. We're going to give it coverage here. You know, everybody talks about, like, wait a minute. Now, these oil companies, they make a ton of money, but then they put all this carbon into the air, and that has costs all over the planet. I did a story about that a couple of weeks ago. $250 to $300 billion a year. Hey, are they going to pay for that? No. They privatize the gains and they socialize the losses and spread it out to everybody. And Bernie Sanders running for president. By the way, I know it's basically a 2-person race on the Democratic side and about 28 people on the Republican side, but Sanders has similar, if not higher, percentages than Donald Trump does. So now he's not leading, he's in second place, but you'd think he'd get a little bit of coverage. Anyway, so what does he say? No, I'm going to do something about it. So let me read you his proposal. He's setting himself apart from the frontrunner Hillary Clinton, Huffington Post explains. Sanders offers a hard target to reduce carbon pollution beyond the current administration, vowing to cut emissions 40% by 2030 and 80% by 2050, to which I say, damn. He says to achieve that, he would mandate emitters pay for the amount of greenhouse gases they pump in the air. Now, again, Washington will look at that and go, what? 80% reduction by 2050? You're crazy. But wait a minute, why is that crazy? He's saying, if you guys are going to put that stuff in the air, either you're not going to do it or you're going to pay for it, right? Is that fair? Like, fair in Washington is considered radical. And why is it radical? Because the American people don't agree with it? No. Radical because the donors and lobbyists in Washington don't agree with it. All right. In the sweeping 16-page plan, Sanders lays out an agenda that would repeal fossil fuel industry subsidies, dedicate funding toward a clean energy workforce of 10 million jobs, ban oil, coal, coal, and gas lobbyists from working in the White House. Now, he said, no, I get it, man. Look, if I'm this tough on coal and oil, we might have some issues with people, not just the rich executives, but people who work in those industries. Don't worry, I got your back. We're going to be go towards cleaner energy. We're going to be free of the reliance that we have on the Middle East for the oil. That's what Americans are saying that they've been wanting for decades and decades. And I want to create 10 million jobs while doing it. Sounds pretty good so far. And he says, and he wants to return billions to the communities hit hardest by the transition to cleaner energy sources and extreme weather tied to climate change. So he's saying, if your community got hit by tornadoes in Oklahoma, for example, right, or extreme weather events like the drought in California, let alone in Texas, right, and all these different places. Now, you can't necessarily directly tie one of those weather events to climate change, but overall, we know that it has led to greater weather disasters. And in a macro sense, those costs are borne by the good people of Oklahoma, California, Texas, etc., when they should be borne by the people who created that mess in the first place. I love that being perfectly rational in D.C. is like, whoa, that is so outrageous we can't even utter it in public. Now, more outrage. Sanders' plan would outright ban offshore drilling, ban Arctic drilling, block natural gas exports, stop attempts to lift a decades-old ban on crude oil exports, support states trying to ban natural gas fracking, and ban mountaintop removal coal mining. Again, Washington heads exploding, and he's saying, no, I didn't stutter. I think you're missing what I'm saying. I'm against those dirty fossil fuels. I'm going to do less of that, and I'm going to do more cleaner fuel, which is what we should have been doing all along. That's how the president leads. Okay. Now, speaking of that investment, he says investing in solar, wind, and other renewable sources, the proposal states would create millions of jobs. That sounds pretty good. Now, let's be fair to Hillary Clinton. The Republicans, of course, don't want to do anything about this. They would look at this proposal and their hair would light on fire like it was a faucet near a fracking site. So, but Hillary Clinton does have a decent proposal of her own, not nearly as dramatic as Bernie Sanders, but Clinton's proposal laid out a specific target to have every U.S. home powered by renewable energy by 2027. Now, those are just homes. It's a little bit narrower in that sense, and a $30 billion blueprint to help coal communities shift to cleaner energy. And she's a little bit more specific about the dollars that she would attach to that, so you have to give her credit for that. Okay, now, why is Bernie Sanders doing this? Well, let's listen to the man himself. He says, right now, we have an energy policy that is rigged to boost the profits of big oil companies like Exxon, BP, and Shell at the expense of average Americans. CEOs are raking in record profits, while climate change ravages our planet and our people, all because the wealthiest industry in the history of our planet has bribed politicians into complacency in the face of climate change. So this is exactly what the Sanders campaign is about. You assume these things in Washington, that they always have to be that way, that even though these are literally the most profitable companies in the history of the world, we can't take away their subsidies, we can't either charge them for the carbon that they're putting into the air, which then has cost for all of us, or we can't stop them from doing it. But the reality is we can do a lot of those things. We can do all the things that Bernie Sanders outlined if we just stop bribing our politicians. The only reason it seems undoable right now is because Exxon, BP, et cetera, they just pay an enormous amount of money in lobbying and campaign donations and quote-unquote independent expenditures to these senators and congressmen, politicians in D.C., so they go, no, I'm not going to do anything about it. I find it outrageous. If you ever touched Exxon or BP's unbelievable record-breaking profits, and on top of all this, for them to get subsidies year in and year out, take money out of the U.S. taxpayer's pocket, it's an outrage that somebody's got to do something about. And Bernie Sanders says, I'm the man, I'm going to do it. These policies are popular, and I'm ready to implement them. Now, has that gotten a lot of coverage in the press? Hell no. Oh, a popular position, and one that is totally antithetical to what Washington's doing. Shh. All right. Well, I think that no matter what the Washington media and the establishment media does, a lot of the country is feeling the burn. And if he becomes president, soon the fossil fuel industry might also feel the burn. Damn. All right, now let's take a quick break and get ready to, well, I don't know if it's going to be so quick. Let's take a break and get ready to annihilate Donald Trump when we return. All right, back on the Young Turks. Since we're going to have a special post-game on firetalk.com/The Young Turks today after the show, I got to come go to the vault and come up with an old jank sex story. Let's make it spicy, okay? Now, recently on Old School, I told the story of the face stroker. And
that's one of my favorite stories of all time. I tell my friends about that story. Christian loves that story.
It's a classic. Okay.
Actually, why don't you bring that back and then I'll add on to it?
Oh,
yeah.
You have a face stroker of your own?
I have stories.
Ooh.
It'll be good.
Okay, face stroker. And then we had, of course, the Mormon lady who was anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic that I had sex with anyway. So Wild and Woolly, that's after the show at firetalk.com/The Young Turks. So don't miss that. And Firetalk has interactive features. We're on there every day, actually, and they're live streaming specialists. And we've been live streaming for 10 years. Makes sense that we have a partnership with them. But on Tuesdays and Fridays, I take comments only from Firetalk. And so let me give you a bunch of comments from there, and then we'll go forward. So Vani writes about Fox News. Have they asked any Muslims if they feel like there's been anti-Muslim actions? Of course not. Although some of their best friends are Muslim. Okay, but they didn't bother asking any of them. Ben Cosette said, there is no war against Islam. Now on to the Christmas where there is a war. Okay.
That's such a great point. Oh, my God.
I know, but that's actually the second story of this hour.
Yeah.
Where Ted Cruz is talking about, not a war on Christmas, but a war against Christians. Yeah, I know. We're trying to keep all the Christians out of the country, right? No, it's insanity. Okay, the Chris Lapaco writes in, they said on Fox News yesterday that everyone looked like a terrorist on the subway in the days after the attack. He's right. We didn't run that clip because it was going to go too long, but it's that annoying, I'm going to try to use a calm adjective, woman, Kennedy, that used to be on MTV.
Oh, yes.
She's like, after the attacks, I looked around and all the Muslims looked like terrorists to me. Something along those lines. I was like, what the right? So, right there on your own programs. All right, anyway. Milk North writes in, so Fox is calling out their audience to step up their game. Come on, Fox viewers, only 16% Muslim hate crime. We can get this up. Probably, I didn't think of that, but maybe that is what they were doing. And finally, Sean says, so would Trump have to be careful about Cenk because he looks Muslim even though he's agnostic? So actually, Sean, I've answered this many times before when people asked, hey, have you ever faced discrimination? And until recently, never, not my whole life, because I actually look like a lot of people. I look Italian, I look Cuban, I look Persian.
Cuban?
Yeah, in Miami, they used to think I was Cuban.
I see it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, look at this. I get it. I'm not hot enough to be Cuban.
Easy. Okay. A lot of people mistake me for supermodels. And I'm just kidding.
Yeah, every Cuban's a supermodel. Yeah, I know.
To me, they are.
Okay. Perhaps a little biased there. Anyway, and my name is weird, so Cenk Uygur is not a name that stands out as particularly Muslim. I never felt it. I have recently. It's gotten much, much worse, right? But he makes a very good point, and one that my friends and I were talking about on email today. The guys that I grew up with, a third of them, a quarter of them are Turkish. So they're almost all atheists. But Trump's not going to ask you if you're an atheist, right? So if you're a Muslim American and you went on a business trip and you're coming back from the business trip, nope, sorry, you're not allowed back in the country. No, but wait a minute, I'm an atheist. Yeah. Tell it to the judge. That's, among all the different insane things, that's also incredibly insane. I'm agnostic, I'm atheist. Yeah. Back you go. Back where? Like these kids, all these guys, I at least was born in Turkey. Everyone else that I know was in that group of Turkish kids that I grew up with, they were all born here, raised here. They have nowhere to go. The guy was born in North Dakota. Where the fuck's he going to go?
Jimmy Dore had a similar type of quote during our power panel once, but it's true. You have to be a special kind of asshole to get atheists to fight in favor of freedom of religion. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you really think about it, like, I don't care about religion. I mean, if I could live in a country where there was absolutely no religion whatsoever and everyone was happy, that would be the ideal situation. But that's not the situation. I believe in freedom of religion. And right now we're living in this country where we have politicians that are leading me, who doesn't like religion, to fight for the right to believe in something.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. But I always believe in freedom of religion because the people who are going to get protected first under freedom of religion, if you were to hold to it, are atheists and agnostics. If you were true to it, right? Because those are the guys who, under normal circumstances, would get attacked first. These days, nobody's got time to attack atheists. We're way too busy with the Muslims.
Yeah.
In fact, I was on a plane, this was a couple of years ago, before even the hysteria, right? And there's some guy was sitting with me, obvious right-winger, et cetera. We got along great until we got to the topic of religion. And he's like, oh, you're a Muslim, right? And I said, well, I'm atheist now. He's like, oh, I guess that's better.
Wow. Wow.
So, okay, that's where we are today in America. Okay. Let's do the second hour.
All right. A group of clever YouTubers try to see whether or not individuals really know what religion doctrine includes. Now, these two guys have a very famous YouTube channel known as Dit is Normal, and it is a group of Dutch dudes who do these really fun experiments. In this latest experiment, they took the Quran, actually they took the Bible, disguised it as the Quran, and then they read it to people. Here's their reaction.
Als u mijn verordeningen verwerpt en als uw ziel van mijn bepalingen walgt, u zult dan het vlees van uw eigen zonen eten en het vlees van uw eigen dochters zult u eten. Want ik sta niet toe dat een vrouw onderwijs geeft. Dan moet u haar hand afhakken. Laat uw oog haar niet ontzien. Wanneer een man met een andere man slaapt, zij moeten zeker tot de dood gebracht worden.
Wat is jullie eerste reactie? Klinkt echt belachelijk.
Nou, ik wist eigenlijk helemaal niet dat dit ook erin stond.
Hoe kan je hierin geloven? Ongelooflijk vind ik dat eigenlijk.
Handen afhakken en zo, ja, zo zijn zij blijkbaar, maar ik...
That's the way they are. So it's a great video. You should watch the whole thing.
The whole thing, yes. We'll include a description or a link to the description box.
So every one of them, now look, it's not necessarily everyone they talked to, but everyone that was in the video is like, oh man, oof. And they're more understanding Europeans. It's not like they're a Fox News crew here in the U.S. or anything like that. But like, oh, I didn't know that was in there. That's really terrible. Oh, eating the flesh of your sons and daughters, cutting off their hands. See, this is the problem with them.
Yeah, exactly. The initial reaction was par for the course, right? What can you expect from these Muslims in the Quran? Their religious doctrine is so evil and so terrible. And then they're like, actually, this is the Bible. Okay, we disguise it as the Quran. We're reading you verses from the Holy Bible. And interestingly enough, people responded with some humility, which I feel like you wouldn't get in the United States. No, you wouldn't. So let me give you a quick quote from one participant in this whole experiment. One person says, it's all just prejudice, really. I always try not to be prejudiced myself, but apparently I already am. That self-awareness is very admirable.
Yeah, almost all the reaction on the tape was of people going, like, oh, man, you got me. Oof, man, I didn't know that was in the Bible. That's really interesting. Mm-hmm. I feel like in the U.S., you'd get a totally different reaction. Like, what are you talking about? No, it's not. Shut up. Right? Well, look. Maybe
safe space. We need a safe space, everyone. I'm offended.
Right. So, read the Bible, man. That's what I always tell you. Now, it's not like it's not in the Quran. The Quran also talks about cutting hands off, but so does the Bible.
Right.
And it's not like the Bible's never been used to do those things. It has been used as an excuse to do those things, and so has the Quran. So no one is innocent here in terms of the religious texts. All the religious texts are, unfortunately, yes, there are some good parts, no question about it. Sermon on the Mount in the Quran, feed the poor, feed the poor. It says it over and over again, right? Take 10% of all your money and give it to the poor. That's in the Quran. Jesus, help the poor, help the needy, right? And then kill them all, cut their flesh off, eat it, kill their cows, kill their babies, do anything you want. Quran, Bible. Read them. Don't trust us for it. Pick up the book, turn to any random page. I would be really surprised if you weren't horrified by what was in either one of those books.
Exactly. All right. While various politicians, including Donald Trump, continue to discriminate against Muslim religion, turns out that some politicians like Ted Cruz believe that Christian religion is really under attack. In fact, during a recent campaign stop in South Carolina, Ted Cruz made a point about how one female high schooler was about to go to jail because administrators in the government did not allow her to use the word Jesus during one of her speeches. Now, was that a true story? Of course it wasn't. Let me give you the details. Cruz made the remark after telling the story of Angela Hildenbrand, a high school valedictorian who he claims was threatened with jail if she exercised her right to pray during her graduation speech. Now, to put this story into more context, the school that girl goes to was under fire by one atheist student who filed a lawsuit against the school in 2011 because he felt that many of these class meetings, these assemblies, would lead to praying, and that's not supposed to happen at public schools. So during this lawsuit, this one female student, Angela Hildenbrand, joined in later in an appeal process in order to basically fight back against the government when judges ruled that, hey, praying in school is probably not a good idea. We're not supposed to endorse religion in public schools. Now, attorneys from the Liberty Institute filed an emergency motion and won an appeal shortly after her graduation. So what does that mean? I'm sorry, shortly before her graduation. So that basically means that she was able to give whatever speech she wanted. She was never threatened with jail time. There were no threats whatsoever. The original ruling just stated that if you're in a public school, that public school is not supposed to endorse one religion or another. Now, in the appeal process, the judges ruled that, hey, you know what? It's not the administrators or the teachers that are leading the students to prayer. It's the students themselves, and it's a little different. I don't know if I agree with that ruling either, because you're dealing with a captive audience during a graduation ceremony. But nonetheless, that was the ruling.
So, first of all, I don't know if Corwin Schultz is, and you might know this better than I do, whether he's an atheist. He's the guy who sued saying, I don't want to hear a Christian prayer, or if he's Jewish, right? And it doesn't really matter either way, but why should Jews have to listen to a Christian prayer during their graduation ceremony? Now, if you said, why do Muslims need to listen to, you're not going to get a lot of sympathy. But hey, Hindus, Buddhists, atheists, why do we have to, we don't believe in the same thing you believe in. Why are you forcing us to listen to your prayers? It's like they always feel like they're the victims. No, you're shoving it down our throat. We're not going out there. Corwin, let's say he's atheist. It's not like he's going out there and like, ha ha, your God sucks. He's non-existent. Let me tell you all about it. He's not the one doing that. You're forcing the religion on him. You're victimizing him, not the reverse, right?
Right. Now, look, this fear-mongering is exactly what works for the Republican Party. They're speaking to their right-wing base that believes that their religion is under attack because, oh my God, look, it turns out that we're giving people equality and we're giving them rights, like the right to marry if you're in a same-sex relationship, right? So they think that they're under attack because we're expanding rights to various groups of people. And so Ted Cruz is playing into that. He's fear-mongering to them, and they think, oh my God, this Ted Cruz guy, he's going to fight for us. He's going to make sure that us Christians will no longer be disenfranchised in the United States.
Yeah, and okay, so if all this was true, it would still be, an interesting story. Hey, wait a minute now. I'm not sure they should go as far as putting her in jail for that, but there's a good reason why she wouldn't be allowed to give a prayer. But the story isn't true.
No, not at all.
She's not going to go to jail if she said Jesus. That wasn't the original ruling at all. The original ruling didn't have anything to do with the students. They wouldn't be punished at all, let alone going to jail, let alone for mentioning Jesus.
Yes. Look, Greg Lipper, who was one of the lawyers who worked on this case, he's from Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Okay, sounds like a pretty good cause in a country that's supposed to be in favor of separation of church and state. He says there was a reference in the preliminary injunction to enforcement mechanisms, but that was aimed at the school district, not the students. There was no threat of any student getting punished by the court, let alone getting sent to jail. So were the administrators threatened with jail time? Well, if you don't follow the rules that the court has given you, then you will be found in contempt of court, and you could possibly face jail time,
but
like Kim Davis.
For repeated infractions. But that'd have to be over the course of many years. If every year they send a kid out there to give a Christian prayer, full well knowing the court told them not to do it, that would be the case. But first of all, they won, so none of it was true.
Right.
They were allowed to give the prayer anyway, right? Second of all, even the original court said you can mention Jesus all you want. You just can't do a prayer. Okay? You can tell a story about Jesus. You can tell how you relate to Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. That was allowed in the original decision. The original decision was overturned anyway, and there was never a threat of jail time, let alone any punishment for the students. So it is a lie through and through. But Ted Cruz loves that kind of lie. He's exactly the kind of demagogue. He's like, yummy for my tummy. I can profit off of this. I can get some votes on this. Oh, my God, the discrimination that poor Christians suffer in this country. Like, banning all Muslims like I want to do? Not just Trump. Today, Cruz proposed 3 different laws to ban Muslims from this country. Okay? A 3-year ban in one case if you come from a majority Muslim country. Okay? Unbelievable, right? But no. They're not discriminated against. If you say the word Jesus, you're going to be arrested. A total and utter fraud. That's what Ted Cruz is. Finally, this Hildebrand character, who was the valedictorian, so God bless her heart on that. Ironic. But she's also part of this victim industrial complex. Hildebrand was not even named in the lawsuit at the time of the injunction, as they explain. She intervened and added her name as a defendant during the appeals process. So she jumped in like, you're suing me too, you're suing me too. No, I wasn't suing you. I was asking the school not to do the prayer. No, I'm the victim. I'm the victim. I'm the victim. I'm a defendant.
Yeah.
Okay? But you're the majority. You get to say Jesus, Jesus, Jesus all over the place anyway. Most people go to church. You're an overwhelmingly majority Christian community. So one kid says, hey, man, could you not force it down my throat? I'm the victim. I'm the victim. Right?
Yeah.
God, they want to be the victim so bad. And then they accuse liberals of having a victim mentality. It's nothing but projection. All they want to do is cry all day long, even though they're the ones in charge.
Yeah. By the way, she went to a campaign stop with Ted Cruz, and she's the perfect, she's the valedictorian, right? It's the perfect recipe for Ted Cruz's propaganda.
Look, back when I was a conservative, maybe I'll, on top of the sex stories, I'll tell this story too. We're going to do a big post game today.
Okay.
In the post game, I'll tell you, when I was a conservative at law school, how they reached out to me to try to publicize something, okay? And it gives you a great sense of how things work. I don't know why I never told the story before. Maybe in some show a million years ago, but I'll tell it again to see how this victim industrial complex works.
All right.
Okay?
Sounds good.
So that's on firetalk.com/The Young Turks after the show today. All right, what's next?
A British couple has just been sentenced to 6 years in prison after they were caught keeping a Nigerian man as a slave for 24 years. Now, the couple brought the Nigerian boy into the country when he was 14 years old, and they got caught when he was 40. They told the teenager they would educate and pay him, but they forced him to work long hours for no pay and threatened him with deportation if he tried to escape. The victim, now 40, was forced to cook, clean, garden, and care for the couple's children without any pay for up to 17 hours a day. He had to eat alone and typically slept on the floor of the hall. This was in London, by the way. I mean, it's incredible that it went on as long as it did, and part of the reason why they didn't get caught was because he was so afraid that he was going to get in trouble. He was going to be imprisoned or sent back to Nigeria if he spoke out against what they were doing to him.
So they were also originally Nigerian at one point. They're British, right? But so they pretended that he was related to them.
Right.
And a part of how they got away with it. But this is an old trick. Some of the Gulf countries do this in mass. They say, okay, come here. Oh, we'll give you work. It'll be great. It'll be an opportunity. And then the minute you enter the country, they're like, give me your passport. Okay, that's it. I have it. Now you're screwed. You can't go anywhere, right? So in this particular case, oh, man, if you go to the police, we'll turn you in. They'll deport you. And he thinks, well, I mean, I'm not here legally. I guess they will deport me, right? It's a logical fear to have. So when governments like Qatar do it like, hey, we need to build a massive stadium here because we got, World Cup coming or whatever it might be. Okay, hey, you Indonesians, Pakistanis, whoever you might be, come on in. We got great jobs for you. Now give me all your passports. You're stuck. Now go do that basically as slave labor for, however many years it takes.
What I don't understand is just the prevalence of cruel people right? And I think maybe because we are in this news bubble where we're constantly covering really bad stuff, but you hear stories like this and you wonder how a couple can be this cruel and this terrible to someone in this day and age for so long and have no remorse about it. By the way, they got sentenced to 6 years in prison for this. They robbed this man of 24 years of his life, and they get 6 years in prison for it.
Yeah, and this is unfortunately not a unique story, not just the en masse ones that I'm talking about, but I've seen story after story. This happens here in the U.S. too, where usually people from a rich background will bring in people from a different country, and they'll threaten them just like this. I'll take your passport. I'm going to turn you in. And then they just force them to work for years, decades at a time, don't pay them, and abuse them. Again, the needless cruelty is also what drives me crazy.
Yes.
Making him sleep on the floor.
I know. They're
right?
bad people. They're terrible people.
And there was a case where they had, a girl, and they'd force her to sleep in a closet. Right? It's just sickening, man. Sometimes people's cruelty to one another is unfortunately horrifying.
Yeah.
Thank God he's finally out of it. He's now 40, but at least he's out of it. And of course he's staying in the UK.